If you want to become a homeowner, but you have not pulled the trigger yet, I can almost bet there is one thing that is blocking you from making that decision. And I'm going to say this as a real estate professional after helping almost 1,000 people move, and a lot of those were first-time home buyers. There is almost always one thing that is blocking somebody from making the decision to become a homeowner. So in this video, I'm going to review what that is and how we talk through this with our clients. And at the end of the conversation, they can help make a better decision if buying makes sense or not. And the one thing that blocks the most people from deciding to become a homeowner is one simple thing I want to share with you here. Here's a picture of a house, and this is what we can afford versus the house that we want. It's a very simple concept. The house that we want is more expensive than the house that we can afford. Now, this has nothing to do with your ability to afford anything. There is a real reason for this, specifically here in Orange County. So if you're living in Orange County, this is absolutely going to reign true for you. So if you want to become a homeowner, that means kind of by default, we are renting, which is totally fine. And full transparency, I'm renting right now as well too. And here's the dilemma that everybody that's renting runs into. I am in this current dilemma right now. So number one is, if I want to spend, let's say I'm spending $5,000 per month on rent, versus if I were to buy something, let's just say that I was like, well, I'm paying $5,000 a month, I can afford a $5,000 mortgage. Well, here's the difference. It's almost backwards of what we just showed. Your money goes a lot farther renting. You can buy a much bigger house renting than if you purchase. And I say bigger in the sense of like, you can get, generally speaking, a better house if we're in the same city and everything else is relative. So what ends up happening here is you look at, well, shoot, for $5,000 a month, I can get a much nicer house. And rather than if I buy something, you need a $5,000 mortgage payment, it's not going to be nearly as nice. And this concept right here is what stops a lot of people from becoming a homeowner, or at least making the decision to become a homeowner. And the reality is we are thinking in the short term. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I want to start thinking about this in the long term. Not because I want you to buy a house, but because I want you to be aware of the reasons why home ownership is so powerful. And to be totally clear, I am renting right now. As a real estate professional, you might be like, well, Christian, why should I buy a house if you're renting? I just purchased my first investment property instead of buying my primary residence here, frankly, for this reason. Is I'm getting all of these benefits that we're talking about on investment properties as opposed to my primary residence. So I am still getting these benefits, just not from the home that I'm living in, which is another route to go. But most people want to own their primary residence, which is probably why you're watching this video. So let's talk about this. And the topic here is wealth creation. I'm going to say AKA net worth. Jeez. This is something that once you become a homeowner, you will not want to get rid of, is these wealth builders. So let's talk about the first one. There are several of these. I'm going to go in detail on each one. The first one is your principal paydown. Is that the right principle? I'm sure somebody in the comments will let me know if I use the wrong principle here. This basically means when you make your payment, some of this goes towards paying down your balance. Right? So in all of these, I'm gonna use several different examples, but I'm gonna use a $1 million purchase, frankly, for round numbers sake, for the rest of the examples here. So number one, principal paydown. So principal paydown is just simply means that every single month you make your mortgage payment, just like every single month you make your rent payment, the entire rent goes in the proverbial trash can, versus your mortgage payment goes in several different areas, one of those which is in your principal paydown. I say AKA your piggy bank. This is like forced savings. Now, the second thing, I'm going to come back to the principal paydown here, but I want to tie this together with the most powerful And the reason why so many people, one of the major reasons why so many people build a lot of wealth through real estate, and this is through value appreciation. Now, we're specifically talking about Orange County here, so I want to come back to this point from a value perspective. Oops. So, the reason why rental payments in Orange County specifically are so much smaller than what it costs to buy is simply for one reason. When an investor buys in Orange County, they are buying for value appreciation, not for cash flow. They're not buying because they're going to make so much money in cash flow. Yes, relatively speaking, rents are high, but a $6,000 mortgage payment on a $2 million house is that math is not a great return. If you just paid $2 million and got $6,000 a month back, not really a great return on cash. So the reason that people buy it is for this. I'm going to explain right now. So on a $1 million purchase, I'm going to do this over 5 years. The reason I'm going to do this over 5 years is because the average person that buys their first home lives in there for 5 years. So that's why. So in year 0, you bought the home for $1 million, right? Because we're using $1 million purchase. You can scale up or down the numbers. The concept is what I want to deliver here. Now, value appreciation or price appreciation is anywhere from 3% to 5% on average. Now, in Orange County, it is 5%. Depends on what time horizon you look at it. But I'm going to go off of a conservative 3% price appreciation. Now, home prices go up and down all the time. But if you zoom out far enough, prices on average go up 3% every single year. So I'm going to use that as the indicator. So if I say plus 3% in year 1, so after 1 year of owning the home, your home's going to go up in value by 3%, which is $30,000. So your home would have increased by plus $30,000, which is 3%, right? Which is cool. Now that is, I'm gonna cover 2 concepts here. One, that money's like locked away because it's in the value of the home, and that could go down. So this isn't guaranteed at all. But I want to make one point here is that if you annualize this, let me pull up a calculator. And annualize just means if you spread that out over the year, divided by 12 is $2,500 a month. So remember I said we had a $5,000 mortgage payment. Now mind you, a $5,000 mortgage payment is probably not $1 million house, but half of that would be on value, right? So you're banking that. So you can't look apples to apples on renting versus buying. We're going to go in more detail here. So next, we are going to go another 3% because that's on average every single year. Now this is where compounding takes over and becomes incredibly important. So in year 2, after 2 years of owning the home, your home appreciated another 3%, but it's not 3% of the original $1 million. It's 3% of the $1,030,000, right? So that $30,000 increase in the first year becomes $30,900. You're like, well, Christian, $900 extra isn't a big deal. You're right, it's not that big of a deal, but that takes your purchase price to, or rather value, to $1,060,900. So now we're $61,000 almost more. So let's continue. Like I said, we're gonna do this for 3 years. I might have to start writing a little bit smaller, but if I do 3 more years, or rather 1 more year, we're on year 3 now. So that takes us, so I'm going to do a calculator here. So 1,060,090 times 1.03, that's a 3% increase. That takes us to 1,092,727. So we are almost $100,000 increase in overall value in just 3 years of owning the home. Now, if I do this a few more times, I'm going to do 4 here and I'll move 5 over to the side, times 1.03. Now we're at $1,125,508. And then if I do plus 3 one more time, I think you guys are getting the point. On year 5, we are at 1,000,001. I'm just going to round up to 160. 1,160,000. So that is a plus $160,000 increase in net worth in 5 short years. Now also, let's just say if you had $1 million purchase, let's just say you put 20% down. So when you bought this, you put $200,000 down, meaning you had $800,000, or rather you had $200,000 in equity in the house. Well, you have almost doubled your cash that you put into the deal just by holding onto this thing for 5 years. But that's not all. Let's go back up here. We said principal pay down. Well, after 5 years of payments, right? Remember, some of that goes into the piggy bank. So we would be plus $58,000 here, and this is based off a 6% interest rate. Rates will change this number here or there, but the point is, you will have not only after 5 years here, your home would be worth an additional, do an arrow up, an additional $160,000. You also have the $58,000 that you put into the piggy bank of your home. These are 2 of the benefits so far, and these are 2 of the most powerful ones. The third one are your tax benefits. Now, I'm not, call your CPA. I'm not an accountant. I'm not giving you tax or legal advice. Having said that, most people get tax savings from owning a home. A lot of the times you're able to write off your property taxes and your interest. These are things you're gonna have. Now, I will give you my example of when I was a first-time home buyer. I bought my first condo for $525,000, and I put 5% down, and my tax savings in year 1 was $12,000. And then times 5 years, let's just use that, right? This is my example. I had my house for roughly 5 years. That is the average. What's 12 times 5 is 60. So this was an additional $60,000. And again, we are talking net worth. So if I'm highlighting the really important stuff, after 5 years, after 5 years, after 5 years, right? Now, the last thing that I'm going to put on here, number 4, I'll put way down here. No, I'm going to keep it on the same page. I'll do it here. Number 4 here is forced appreciation. What does this mean? Think of, I'm just going to write reno. This is renovations. So let's say you bought a house and it wasn't a new construction, or it wasn't a flip, or it wasn't perfect, right? Let's say you bought a normal house that was renovated 15 years ago. And maybe you update the kitchen and you spend $20, $30, $50,000 in the kitchen, but it raises the value of the home by $80,000. So maybe you spent $40 and it increased value by $80. Maybe you did the bathroom for $10,000 and it added $30,000, $40,000 in value. Maybe you simply just painted the place and made it look better and it added $20,000, $30,000 in value. So let's say over the course of 5 years, you do little projects around the house that add another $50,000 in value. That increases this as well too. So this is the 4 major wealth builders in here. Now here's where this gets super, super powerful. I want to tie all this together. So we have $50,000. Let me highlight with green here. $58,000. We have 160 and 60. So let me do some math here. I'm going to go to my calculator. So 160 plus 60 plus 58. So we're talking $278,000 in increased net worth because we bought a home. Let me give the comparison to versus 5 years times $5,000 per month in rent is 60 times 5,000 negative 300,000 if we were just renting. Now obviously I have to live somewhere, so it's really not negative 300,000, but this is a pretty big swing. Is you're making almost a $600,000 swing in 5 years on $1 million house, which that's insane. That is insane. I didn't know that was that big of a number. But here's where the real magic happens. Remember when we talked about this in the very, very beginning? And I'm sure you can imagine this takes a lot of conversations to help home buyers make this, or rather anybody, to see if this even makes sense. And the reason I'm making this video is because we have this conversation with clients literally every single day. And I like to make videos to make your life a little bit easier. And if you want to do that, first of all, I broke down our entire home buying process. So if you are at all piqued your interest of buying a home, I highly recommend you download this. The link's going to be in the description. But this is our home buyer negotiation blueprint. This goes through the 4-step process of how we help our clients get the best deal possible in their home buying thing. Now, this is cool, but this used to be 126 pages, and my marketing manager yelled at me, and she said it was too long. So now I made it 13 pages. So if you want all of the information and break down this that I'm doing on our screen here for you and your unique situation, what you should do is on the next page after you download this, go and book a call with our team and do what we call a buyer strategy session, where we break down all of the things that we talk about you and your unique situation. So anyway, let me get back to the video. But this is the overall concept: is you want this house, but the problem is you're not gonna buy it first. Right? So here's what we're looking at. So you bought your first house for $1 million. And you are like, you know what, 5 years later, maybe you got an extra, you need a bigger house, you need more space, you're tired of a townhome condo, whatever it might be. Now it's time to upgrade. Well, guess what? That original $200,000 you put down, now you are adding this, you're adding the $278,000. So guess what? Now you have $478,000 for your down payment, right? So let's just say you're putting 20% down. What is this math? So 478 divided by 0.2. So this means that if you wanted to put 20% down again, and assuming you monthly payment could qualify for this, that means you already have the down payment in just 5 short years to buy for 239,000. So a $2.4 million house from $1 million house by having 5 years of wealth creation. Now, this is a big fat caveat that you did not waste your tax savings for 5 years, which most people do. If you actually saved that money, if you actually had 3% price appreciation, this does not include any forced appreciation in your principal pay down. This is very, very real numbers. So what most people end up doing is they sell that house. They bought it for $1 million. They're going to sell this for, what did we say, 1.15? 1.16. And then they're going to buy for 1.5. Oops. They're going to do this for 5 more years, and they're going to sell for $2 million and then buy for 2.5. Right? And these numbers go in any direction. You could do this with 300,000 all the way up to 800. Like, the numbers, like, they really don't matter. The value on the higher price points, though, this is why people like to own higher priced properties, is because that 3% is a lot of money, right? 3% of 300,000 versus 3% of 3 million. That's a big difference right there. But this overall, this is the reason why most people get stuck, is we're trying to buy this house, this one, you're trying to buy it first. And you're saying, well, gosh, this is what I want, and I can only afford this. And it's nothing against your ability to afford. This is just how people buy their, my God, these are ugly houses. But this is how people buy the dream house. My parents did this. Almost everybody I know that lives in a really nice house that's paid off right now, they started with a dump. They renovated that, they moved into, they sold that, they moved into the next thing, and all of that. Now, if you want a massive bonus, all right, so if you want a huge bonus, and this is not for everybody, is you buy your first one, you buy for $1 million, and then it's worth 1.15. and then you rent it. You make it an investment property, and then you start collecting, let's say you start collecting the $5,000 a month. Now, does it financially make sense to do this? No idea. It depends on the situation. If you can then do this, then you can buy your next home, let's just say, for $1.5 million. 5 years later, this thing is worth $2 million, and then you rent it for 10 grand a month. Rent it out, is what I'm saying here. You become a landlord. And this is how you can become an investor through your primary residences. And this is how you can compound all of these things, because like I said, I don't own my house that I'm living in right now, but I am getting all of these things from an investment property. And if you do this with your primary residence, you can do this without becoming an investor. You just buy a house, you don't sell it, you keep it for 30 years. Then when you have a mortgage paid off, this cash flows like crazy and you make a ton of money. Now that's 30 years in the future, but just imagine what that value is going to be 30 years from now. Everybody I've ever talked to ever in my life says, God, if I would have known what prices would have done 30 years ago, I would have bought more homes. Everybody ever says that. My parents bought their first house for $300,000. They're not their first house. The house they live in now for $300,000 is worth $2.5 million now. And they have it paid off, which is amazing. And if they're renting and trying to save all that money, that is unlikely to have that much, this is the big word, wealth creation, aka net worth buildup. This is the big thing. So this is the thing that blocks most people from becoming homeowners on that first one, is we have to get through the concept of you're not going to buy your dream house first. You have to buy the one you can afford right now, so that you can afford your dream home. Now, there are obviously caveats to this, but this is why we talk about you and your unique situation with all of our clients. If you want to download this, link is in the description. Book a call with our team on the next page. I hope you found this helpful. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.